Excuse me, you mentioned private meetings with various groups, and I'd like to address one in particular. Can you address the ongoing friction that is developing between the Louisiana State Board of Cosmetology and public schools who are offering that program? And what I specifically reference is in 2010 there was a mandate that you had to have 2 instructors to conduct these classes. Nevertheless, the Board of Cosmetology has granted an exception. I could show it right here. They're sort of picking and choosing who does and who does not have to conform to that requirement. And Catherine Brimley at the Louisiana Register said the statute is not enforceable because they did not publish it in the Louisiana Registry, nor did they promulgate it into Title 46, which is what they call the Gold Book. But there has been the contention made that that board, being comprised largely of large school owners, they've had a vested interest in closing down these lower cost competition, including public schools. So could you just address where I know you've been called upon to try to resolve that issue and come to some kind of a happy medium. So could you tell us where things may stand on that particular issue?
The question is about the teaching of cosmetology and about the appropriateness of the way that it's being governed in our state.
Basically, yes.
There has been a long-standing discussion, not just in our state but in other states, about what is a valid industry-based credential to be taught for high school students. And cosmetology is a popular credential in our state. It's also not one that our Workforce Commission identifies as a high-growth, high-wage job. And so there's a question as to how do you, as an educator, reconcile those two things, that it keeps kids in school, kids are interested in it, but on the other hand, it creates somewhat of a false promise that there will be a stackable credential that will lead to further opportunities later in life. The way that we have reconciled that is to work with a legislatively created entity here called the Workforce Investment Council that's made up of business leaders, higher education leaders, and K-12 leaders who determine what industry-based credentials will be offered in Louisiana. And what the commission said was that cosmetology on its own may not be a high-growth, high-wage credential, but running a small business is a high-growth, high-wage opportunity. And so Louisiana, Bessie, and the Workforce Investment Council created something called a micro-enterprise credential, which allows for students who do choose to pursue cosmetology course to also essentially garner a small business license. In the time since then, we've trained hundreds of teachers, cosmetology, business teachers, and others, to administer this. We've placed students in workplaces for internships, as well as created virtual online internships for them to pursue. And I believe that there are hundreds of students who otherwise may have been given a lower level credential, who now will possess both that specific credential as well as a bigger ability and capacity to run a small business.
Well, and the only thing I would ask is the State Department of Education going to take a stand about whether or not that because that's what's causing them to have to close down. The Orleans Parish School Board just told Renata Frazier that we can't afford a requirement to have a second instructor. The old rule said if you had less than 20 students, that's the only time you had to hire a second instructor. Now it can be 3 students, 4 students, and she told me this morning she has 15, but will there be any effort to not enforce shutting down these schools simply because they can't afford to hire a second instructor to conduct the class? I hate to be so micro-specific, but that's the big issue right now that's causing the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue for the Cosmetology Board. We're really focused on the industry credentials that kids can get, where they can get the small business credential, and cosmetology is part of that.
All right, thank you.